you ever speak to me like that again, better be wearing a cup.
Baby steps.
One break, I'm in
Okay, friends, let's everybody take your positions, please. Here we go. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, rolling. Dave!
And
Dave!
Unchained.
welcome to Dave and Dave Unchained, a Van Halen podcast. I'm Dave.
And I am Dave.
And we are at episode 63, Dave. We are in March of 2021. I can't even believe we're here. Today's a special day in the Van Halen world. Do you know what today is?
Today's Wolf Van Halen's birthday.
That's right, but
The
not
big
only
3-0,
that's right, 30 years old. If you can believe that. He is 30 years old. We always think of him as a kid, but he's not a kid. He is a full-grown adult. So happy birthday to Wolf. And we are going to talk about Wolf extensively in Van Halen news, as we always do, because he is the man of action these days. Wow, 30 years, Dave. It's hard to believe. And that's also, for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, is going to turn 30 years old this June. And fair warning, will be 40 next month. 40 years old. Can you believe? I mean, this is like insane. This makes you and I very old.
I know, as the anniversaries keep piling up, it doesn't make us feel any younger.
That's right. That's right. 316, as Midwest Ron likes to note. So,
Are you sure it's not 316?
is that, I know, right? It's always the debate back and forth, but 316, happy 316 to all our Van Halen fans, and of course, a special happy birthday to Wolf, and as we launch into Van Halen news.
Van Halen.
Well, we have an interesting way to start off the news this time out. It's a little strange, but it's important to note. So, it is Tuesday, the 16th of March, and we are just past the Grammys. Now, of course, one thing that always happens at every Grammy year is they pay tribute to those who have passed. Now, we all know a lot of big musicians have passed in the past year, but obviously one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in my opinion, of course, in your opinion, is Eddie Van Halen passing in early October of 2020. Well, Eddie Trunk was all riled up as to what are they going to do to honor Ed. And, you know, here's the typical. The typical is always historical clip for a few seconds and their name with their year they were born, dash to the year that they died, and it's a little pause moment to remember their greatness, and they move on. Well, that's what they gave Ed, and that was very unfortunate considering the level of what Ed brought to the music community. So this is what they did. They gave him a 17-second spot where they had the Frankenstein sitting on stage with a spotlight on it. Then they had a video in the background of Ed playing part of Eruption. I believe the clip was from the US Festival from 1983, and it was just a clip of Eruption, like 17 seconds. And Eddie Trunk went bananas. He went like off the chain about this, and you know, he got very upset by it and what he said, and I agree that he should have had maybe Wolfie come out and play Distance as a tribute to Ed. Distance is a brand new song. It's current. He's a current artist. There is obviously the blood tie there with Ed, and the song is a tribute to Eddie. I mean, what a better way to tie everything together from the current music to, you know, the old music. So, well, he went on, and Eddie was ranting and raving and screaming. Well, the interesting thing is, Wolf came out and talked about this on social media, of course. So this is what Wolf had to say. The Grammys asked me to play Eruption for the In Memoriam section. I declined. I don't think anybody could have lived up to what my father did for music but himself. It was my understanding that there would be an In Memoriam section where bits of songs were performed for legendary artists that had passed. I didn't realize that they would only show Pop for 15 seconds in the middle of 4 full performances for others we had lost. What hurt the most was that he wasn't even mentioned when they talked about artists we lost in the beginning of the show. I know rock isn't the most popular genre right now, and the Academy seems a bit out of touch, but I think it's impossible to ignore the legacy my father left on the instrument, the world of rock, and music in general. There will never be another innovator like him. I'm not looking to start some kind of hate parade here. I just wanted to explain my side. I know Pop would probably laugh it off and say, who gives a shit? He was only about the music anyway. The rest didn't matter. I'd love to get the opportunity to speak with the Recording Academy, not only about the legacy of my father, but the legacy of the rock genre moving forward. Thank you. Now that is pure class in handling that situation. So it's interesting that they did reach out to Wolf, but I can understand why he wouldn't want to play Eruption. I mean, number one, that's going to draw ridiculous comparisons, and especially with him trying to come out with new music, they're going to say, oh, you're not your dad, and blah, blah, blah. Although I'm sure he could rip right through Eruption, no problem. I highly doubt that he couldn't pull that off. I'm sure he would kill that in a minute. And many people can. Even young kids can play Eruption, and they see it on YouTube all the time. Nuno Betancourt from Extreme also came out and said not only was the clip disrespectful, but to not get a tribute performance from his legendary guitar peers is shameful and a missed historical opportunity. Edwards single-handedly, or shall I say double-handedly, reimagined, reinvented, and changed the way the instrument would be played and heard ever again. So I can understand what Nuno's saying too. Maybe if Wolf didn't feel comfortable, that's cool. But I think they could have brought out, maybe Zakk Wylde, John Five, Nuno himself, Steve Vai, and maybe done some sort of round robin with, I think would be cool, maybe one doing Spanish Fly, one doing Cathedral, one doing Eruption. I can't do all of them, but maybe like sections of them. It'd be kind of cool if they did something like that. But it's really sad to say that they didn't take the time. Now, my question to you, Dave, is if Page died, or if Pete Townsend died, or if Keith Richards died, do you think they would have gotten a bigger send-off?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
But again, the legacy of 60s artists is different than the legacies of later period artists. And, for whatever reason, Van Halen just never got as much respect as other artists out there. They just didn't, for better or for worse.
It's true, but you can't deny. I mean, let's put the band aside. I mean, you can't deny what Ed's done.
I hear you, but for some reason, I don't know. But, it's interesting. In addition to Nuno, Gary Cherone had something to say.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, maybe an artist that reimagined how one plays an instrument, who continues to influence generations of musicians and literally changed the course of rock and roll, deserves more than 15 seconds at the Grammys.
Yeah, that's the truth.
And there it is.
Yeah.
And there it is. You're right. I totally get Wolf. He doesn't want to be playing his dad's music.
Totally.
Maybe playing his own song at the Grammys. It kind of looks self-serving.
But it is a tribute to Ed.
Well, that's true. If the song wasn't a tribute to Ed, then it really would look self-serving. So I see your point. But the Grammys, for as long as you and I can remember, which, as we just started at the top of this podcast, is a long time, has always missed opportunities. They have almost never picked the right winner.
Oh, totally.
When things get nominated.
Totally.
And they're not exactly known to be on the pulse of things.
No.
Which is really funny because Ed is a legacy artist. It's not like he's a new artist.
Yeah.
No, full disclosure, I did not watch the Grammys. I almost never watched the Grammys. I can't remember the last time I did. Right. Now, there were other tributes to other artists, right?
Yeah.
Now, who were the other tributes to?
I didn't get into it, but I think Kenny Rogers and there were some other ones. I didn't get into all of it because I got so disgusted I shut it off.
Okay.
But,
so did these other artists get more time than Ed did?
I think the answer to that question is yes. However, the bottom line is really, they said 15 seconds. I counted 17, whatever it is. 17, 15 seconds. That is a very, very, very brief amount of time for someone of Ed's stature. And, I mean, let's be honest. If you're going to put him right up into the same conversation with Hendrix, okay, which he deserves to be, I mean, come on. I think it would have been cool. I understand the Wolf thing. If that doesn't work out, if he doesn't want to do that, that's totally understandable. Totally get that. that would put him in a very difficult position, to be honest. And he's right about Ed. Ed wouldn't give a fuck. He doesn't care at all.
No, that's the thing. Like, Ed wouldn't have given a fuck.
No.
He never really gave a fuck.
Right.
So why should we get all bent out of shape about it?
Yeah, I know. And you know what, though? Curious to see how the Rock Hall handles it. Because, let's be honest, I would imagine that Ed would carry more weight in the Rock Hall than he would with the Grammys, who's so in love with Taylor Swift and Beyonce and Billie Eilish and all the...
But the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has their favorites too.
Yeah.
And let's remember that Van Halen's induction was not one of the more memorable ones. Unless by memorable you mean horrible.
Yeah, oh God.
Right? So
it
they
really
don't... I'm not holding my breath for that one either.
Yeah, I know, but it's like, I'm just saying, curious to see, because, at this point, the spotlight is on them, because their ceremony is going to come up sometime this year, and it's curious to see what they do. You know what I mean? So... But they gave Ed the generic, is what they did. They gave him the generic.
That's true.
Let's just
and he
15
does
seconds
more
of
than the generic.
Of course, yeah.
Right.
So
okay, let's get past the first news item and let's move things along.
Yes, moving along. So Wolf appeared on Bill Burr's Thursday afternoon, Monday morning podcast. This was interesting. So, Bill Burr, who is a comedian who does one of the biggest podcasters out there, he had Wolf on, and he was asking him all kinds of questions. It was sort of random. He was willy-nilly. He was like all over the place. He starts off by asking him, because Bill Burr plays drums. He's a huge drummer. And he said, does your uncle play Mean Street on the hi-hat with one hand or two? Because he could never figure it out. And then Wolf answered, said he thinks that he does it on one hand. And he talked about all kinds of stuff. And Wolf talked about how he began his musical career by drumming. And there he told a story about how his father put the two magazines on the table to see if he could keep rhythm to Highway to Hell, that kind of thing. Once he realized he could keep rhythm with the magazines, he got him a drum kit for his birthday. And he learned how to play, he said, along with Van Halen's Best Of Volume 1 and Blink-182's Enema of the State. And he said his dad didn't really push him toward music. He said he gave him a little nudge, but then he said he figured everything else out as he went along. He said he started at the age of 9 or 10 on drums, and he said his father never forced him, and he just wanted to make sure that he could keep a beat. When he realized he could keep a beat, he realized he had rhythm and musicality, and so he was excited about that for sure. He said his biggest influences on drums were John Bonham, of course, Uncle Al, and Gavin Harrison of Porcupine Tree. And he also said he found out when writing his own material that when he got stuck, he said that he realized that he learned to walk away from the piece and come back later and finish it. He says you can only beat your head against the wall for so long. And he talked about his new album. Said he started writing it back in 2013. He said right after the Different Kind of Truth tour. He says, I wanted to figure out who I wanted to be as my own artist, which was an interesting thing. And he talked about all these comments online, that he's always going back at these trolls. And, Bill Burr was saying you got to kind of ignore them. You can't take the bait. And he says here, like, he would put out a sound clip of 4 seconds of him playing a track, and people would say, sounds like everything else, which is rude, of course. And he says, oh, wow, you can really judge my album by 4 seconds. But he said that the reason why he comes back at people is he says it turns into a game for him, and it's a way for him to entertain himself and make jokes about it. He said it's almost like a puzzle for him. But his favorite troll moment was when he was at Six Flags on his birthday, and him and his father were together, and they were going on different rides, and someone took a picture of them, and it's the two of them flipping the bird to the camera. And then someone wrote a caption, one's a legend, and the other is one okay backup musician. And then he responded, hey, my dad is more than an okay backup musician. Which I thought was kind of funny.
That was pretty clever.
Yeah, that was funny. He says you have to find a way to